Alright, what is up? Slop back at it again with another daily The Finals upload. And today we're going to be getting into the weapons tier list. Now that Season 2 has been going for about a week, I feel like I've gotten a grasp on the balance changes enough to comment on how the meta has shifted since Season 1. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting out, we got the V9S, the silence pistol on the light class. This thing is absolutely goated. It shreds. During the beta, it was beyond cracked, but they nerfed the damage and I think the fire rate slightly, but don't quote me on that. It's still a solid choice, but on controller, which I play, it's definitely a little bit harder to be viable with just because the trigger finger aspect is a lot more difficult being semi-automatic on controller, but maybe that's just me coping. But either way, it is a S tier weapon in my opinion. Goated, you can't go wrong. It's just really good. Alright, then next up on light we have the M11. This thing is just the XP54 without a scope and it's less accurate. It's pretty viable, but you gotta be really close for it to be viable, and if I'm being honest, it's just gonna get like outclassed by the V9S and the XP54 every single time. You definitely could use it, but you're going to have to work a lot harder than some of the other weapons on light. Alright, the sniper rifle, definitely one of the most fun weapons in the game, and in certain players' hands, you could definitely be super cracked with this, but you know who you are. If you're not like a goated sniper, then this is kind of a throw to pick, but at the end of the day, it's about having fun, and if you think the sniper's cool, you should play it. Simple as that, but honestly, overall, I'm going to say it's a B tier weapon. It's definitely usable and pretty viable in the game, but you're going to have a lot harder time using this than something like the V9S, unless you're one of those certain players. Like, there's a few players who would make this seem like an S tier weapon, but I think for the vast majority, it's not quite as good as some of the other weapons in the game. Alright, now we got the XP54, which is just the MP5 with a sight. This thing is pretty much the only weapon I see people who do run light competitively use. It's pretty solid long range, and it's really solid close range. It's just like a better M11. I think the M11 is more fun, but the XP54 is objectively definitely the better weapon. You can't really go wrong with it. It's just an overall solid weapon. Like, it kind of outclasses most of the other light weapons, to be frank. Alright, then we got the dagger. I want the dagger to be good, but it's not. The normal fire is just horrendous. This thing is just straight Dookie Howser. Like, does like 40 damage per hit. You might as well just melee them. But then on the backstab is good. Like, you can one-shot a light or a medium, but I think you can count the players on one hand who would be able to make this like seem like a good weapon in a competitive scenario. Don't use the dagger if you want to be competitive, but if you think it's cool, then become one of those players who's really good with it and change my mind. I think that'd be awesome. But overall, D tier weapon, it's just so hard to like. You just got to work so much harder with the dagger than any other light weapon. LH1, really good. It's just like solid damage output. It's got really good range. The only problem with it is really the visual recoil, if I'm being honest. It's a solid weapon, but you gotta have a good trigger finger, just like with the V9S. But overall, it's a really good weapon, I'd say, and pretty easy to be viable with, but you're gonna have to work a little harder than with like the XP54. Alright, then we got the Dookie Blaster Double Barrel Honky. This thing sucks. I hate it. If you use this, you're cringe, unless you're not. But at the beginning of the game, this was just like super broken, and it was the only gun anybody used on light, and in the game in general, to be frank. But now it's just bad. Like, I would say it's like D or C tier, but I think it's giga cringe, so I'm putting it in F tier because it's just not fun to play and it's not fun to play against. I don't like this weapon at all. Not the move. Alright, now sword. Sword's a tough one because for the vast majority of players, I would say that this is like somewhere between a C tier. No, probably, yeah. I'd say for the vast majority of players, this is going to be a C tier weapon. It's pretty dang hard to make viable, but there's a couple players out there. I think his name was Idorian or something along those lines. Shout out to him. He is insane with the sword and makes it look like an S tier weapon, but I think the amount of people who would also be able to make this weapon look good, you could count on one hand as well. It's just such a different play style, and for the vast majority of people, I think you're better off choosing a different weapon if you want to be competitively viable, but at the same time, if you think the sword's cool, go for it and become one of those cracked players. That'd be dope. Do it. Throwing knives, don't get me started. These are, I think, the coolest weapons in the game, and they're probably the most satisfying to use, but they're just like, they just don't have the damage output that they need. Like, and also, with Season 2, they made the projectile path faster, like, or the projectile speed faster. And I've gotten these almost to level 6 in season 1, and now like they completely changed the like what you need to lead your shots with and stuff for the weapon. So as far as my play style, it's like basically gotten nerfed because I have to completely relearn how to use these. But I think technically, objectively, it would be considered a buff because they should be a little bit more viable now. But it's gonna take a while for me to relearn how to use them. They're so fun, but they're just they're just not comparable to some of these other weapons, which is a shame because they're super cool. Alrighty, and next up we're going to be moving on to some of the medium weapons. We've got the AKM. This thing is super solid. I think, in my opinion, this is kind of like the gun the game seems to be built around. Overall, just solid weapon, solid damage output, solid recoil, solid mag size. You just can't really go wrong. I feel like this should be the gun that most people like use to learn the game. It's kind of like just the default weapon. In my opinion, it's overall great. You can't go wrong with this pick. I think it's just like a more fun FCAR in my opinion. That's a little bit more you're allowed to make a little bit more mistakes than you are with the FCAR. Alright, we've got the revolver up next. This thing is solid, but I think they need to undo some of the damage fall off that they did. It's kind of just a pea shooter now, if I'm being honest. At the beginning of the game, it was a lot better where you could like just hand cannon cross map fools and it was just fun. But they made it so it's got like 45% or no, I think it's like 30% damage after like 40 meters or something, which is just criminal. You need like 5 headshots on a light to kill him past 40 meters, which not exactly a usable weapon when you have a 6-round mag and it's got such a slow fire rate, but it's a super cool weapon and it's super fun, but I wish that they would undo some of the stuff they did to it, especially when they don't seem to want to touch the FCAR when that's the only thing anyone's using. Cringe. Alright, we've got the CL40 next. This thing, I hate it. I hate it so much. It's trash. If you use this, you're a masochist. I don't get it. Why are you using this? It takes like 7 grenades to destroy a wall and like 9 grenades to destroy an enemy. This thing's just bad. At least it's impact, unlike the heavy one, but we'll get to that later. This thing, I hate it. It's just, I don't like it at all. D tier, garbage. Don't use it. Unless you wanna, then use it. But if you wanna be like competitively viable, don't use it. FCAR, F tier for FCAR. No, I'm just kidding. FCAR is, I mean, there's a reason that it's the most used gun in the game by a wide margin. This and that stupid heavy shotgun are the only thing you see in ranked for the past like 2 months at this point. FCAR, not. I think the AK is more fun personally. The FCAR just feels like cringe meta farming, to be frank. It's just like even when you use it, you can tell that it needs a little bit more hindrance. Like it's too good almost. There just needs to be more like damage fall off or more less damage basically. I don't know. It's just like the AK, but more damage, less magazine basically. But the AK is more fun. It's more cool, more based. FCAR cringe. Lame. Don't use the FCAR unless you want to. Then do it. Okay, now we got the Model 1887. This thing is super fun. I think it's super good too. I'd say this is definitely an A tier weapon, probably slightly better than the LH1 if I'm being frank. Um, Close range, it's really good. Obviously, it can't do anything past like 20, 30 meters because it's a shotgun, but that's kind of a shotgun, you know? It's super viable, definitely, but if you want the absolute edge, you're going to want to probably choose the AK or the FCAR on medium, just because once you're outside of range, in a lot of scenarios, you're just going to be a sitting duck with nothing to fight back with. But, you know, it's cool, so who cares? Okay, now we got the Riot Shield. This thing is questionable. I don't know. It's hard to say because it's super annoying to fight against, and there are some players that are really good with it, but I think as far as like above gold rank, you're gonna have a real tough time trying to make this thing viable because people just know how to play around it a lot more. Yeah, it's a C tier weapon. Like, it's kind of like the sword where 99.9% of the players of this game are gonna do horrible with it and not enjoy it, but definitely recommend trying it out because you might be in that .01 that becomes super good with it and has fun trying out that playstyle. So I'd recommend giving it a shot because there are some players that could definitely make this work in a competitive situation, but don't be shocked or frustrated when you're not part of that .001. Just move on to a different weapon. M60, they tried buffing it with Season 2 and making the recoil a little bit more manageable. I don't really notice much of a difference. In my opinion, this is still just a bad Lewis gun. Like, you don't need 70 shots unless you're playing like 5v5 mode and you want to just melt mesh shields on the platform. But other than that, like, this is just not really a usable gun in my opinion. It's just, there's never a scenario where I would think that you should choose the M60 over the Lewis gun in the current lineup. Like, it's just a worse version in pretty much every way, other than mag size. But you don't really need more than 50 bullets or whatever. I think it's 40 bullets on the Lewis gun, but just choose the Lewis gun. Sledgehammer, it's gonna be another C tier weapon. It's just the same with these other melee ones. Like, it's kind of the same situation as the Riot Shield, where most players are gonna have a real tough time trying to make this thing work, and it doesn't have like the utility that you really want. Like, unless you're literally point blank range, you can't even hurt someone, and with a heavy, you're not able to like traverse around or move or dash like the sword. The sword might even be a tier above this, but there's a pretty vast. I mean, well, this has destruction, so maybe not. They both have some utility, but it's just it's so situational where you're gonna want to use it to destroy stuff, and it's not really worth the pick in my opinion over like Lewis gun comes to mind. But honestly, if you think it's fun or you think it's cool, definitely run it and get good with it. But if you're looking to become competitively viable, I wouldn't recommend choosing that. Flamethrower, Dookie Howser, trash, garbage, cringe, not fun. I don't. They need to like make it so it does more environmental destruction and like sets walls and the floors on fire or something. I think that would be super cool. But as it stands, it's just like a, a shotgun that does no damage at all. You gotta hold down on a dude for like literally 30 seconds before it kills him. Like, this is super good if you're like fighting three lights that all stand on top of each other and you can just get them all and a few seconds, but like this is the definition of like a situational gun. In my opinion, this thing is just gonna be useless in at least 75% of the fights in this game. Like you're just gonna not be providing any value to your team whatsoever. Not good. Lewis gun. It was easily a S tier weapon last season, but they've made the recoil a little worse now. It's a bit harder to control. I think it still might be low S tier, high A tier. It's definitely still a super viable weapon, but no, it's an S tier weapon still. You know what? Lewis gun's still really good. Best heavy weapon in my opinion. Now that the S8, we'll talk about that, but um, use the Lewis gun. It's fun. It's cool. It's good. Just use it. Simple as that. MGL 32. Dog doo doo cringe lame loser. I hate it. This Yeah, this is F tier. This is a doggy weapon. This thing's so crap. If you like being trash at the game and not having fun, use the MGL 32. You gotta bounce your grenades to even have them explode on people, and you need like 15 grenades to blow up a wall. I just do not understand the point of this gun. It's just like not good in any way, and it doesn't have any redeeming factors in my mind. But if you think it's fun, use it. But other than that, outside of like your own enjoyment, there's no reason to pick this weapon ever. Okay, and now the elephant in the room, the SA-1216. So this weapon is the only thing people have used in rank the last like month and a half, I'd say. It's been either double heavy medium with two of these, or double medium heavy with one of these, and then like two FCARs. But I made a video about how this needed some nerfs yesterday, and then I wake up today and Embark decided to nerf the pellet damage from 7 to 6, and then I also think they nerfed the fire rate, but don't quote me on that. But I know you're watching, Oscar. Thank you for listening. um, I see you took my ideas and implemented them. I love that. But anyways, this weapon was probably the best weapon in the game as of yesterday, but now I've only used it a tiny bit in the practice range to tell how the nerfs feel, but I never really used this weapon before the nerfs, so I couldn't really tell too much of a difference, to be honest. But we'll have to wait another couple days to see how these nerfs really shake out in the meta. But I'm gonna put it in A just for wishful thinking and hoping that it's trash now and I see other guns being used in ranked, because fighting nothing but this dumb shotgun has been quite frustrating, I won't lie. Okay, now we got the KS-23. This thing, I feel like is the definition of a C tier weapon. It's just like okay, like it's not bad by any means, and you could definitely get some use out of it, but you're gonna have to work a lot harder than most of these other weapons, and it also fits like a certain play style more than most of the other guns, because this is a projectile weapon and not hit scan like pretty much everything other than the throwing knives. So if you like the throwing knives, I recommend giving this a shot, because it's basically throwing knives, but you can blow up walls in like 2 shots. And make that make sense. How come this shotgun can blow up a wall in I think 3 rounds, but then this grenade launcher takes like 7 or 8? Like, make that make sense, Embark. I don't get it. But it's a maybe I haven't used it enough yet, but it seems like an okay weapon, but not like a competitively viable choice in my opinion. But hopefully that changes, because it seems like a cool shake up to the other guns in the game. Okay, now we got the burst pistol on light. This thing is pretty decent. It seems like just a more user-friendly version of the V9S. It's got like decent TTK, decent range. It's just like an overall pretty good weapon. Maybe this is gonna be a high C tier, not a B tier, but it's it's a good weapon. But if you're looking to do the best you possibly can, I recommend just getting good with the V9S instead, because it seems to outclass it in pretty much every way. It's just harder to be good with, in my opinion. But, if you think the burst one's cool, just use that one because, just use whatever you think's cool at the end of the day. And then last but not least, we have the FAMAS, or the FOMAS, whatever you want to call it. We've got the Black Ops 2 burst bullpup thingy. So this weapon, I think people are sleeping on it a little bit. Everyone seems to be calling it trash and mid, but I think there's an argument that this could be super viable in ranked. In my opinion, I think it's better at range than the AK and the FCAR at like super far range, just because it's way easier to like aim and hit all the shots on a burst than it is to control the recoil on one of these two. But as far as like close to mid range, it's a little bit harder to use, and I think the AK and the FCAR just outclass it a little bit. But we'll have to give it a little bit more time to shake out and see how people end up using it and getting good with it. But I think it's definitely a viable choice. It's solid, but better than the revolver in my opinion. Oh, and there we go. That is all the weapons. Well, this has been the Season 2, the Finals weapon tier list. If you disagree or agree with any of these points or choices, please let me know down below. Thank you for watching. This has been Slop. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.
You're so skibbity. You're so Phantom Tax.